Statesman.com today says 39 states have legalized sports betting. Will Texas join the list in 2025? Okay. What do you think? Yes, no? This session, 5 years, 10 years, what do you think? Story says many of the major Texas professional franchises, along with some political heavyweights, are making another push to legalize online betting on games during the coming session of the legislature, arguing that wagering is already happening in the state, but without the regulatory framework needed to protect gamblers. The Texas arm of a national lobby organization called the Sports Betting Alliance said more than 1 million efforts by Texans to access legal sports betting platforms in October, this is just 1 month, in October were blocked by geolocation services, but many would-be gamblers simply find workarounds either through unauthorized betting services or by crossing into a state that allows betting. The result, the alliance says, is that Texas is deprived of hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue that would come with legal betting, and that players have little recourse if they fall prey to unscrupulous gaming sites. In other words, the basic premise, and this is not new, I feel like we've been down this road a few hundred times, but you can ask yourself, do you think things are changing? I don't, but we can disagree. In other words, the basic argument is this. Hey, you're doing it anyway. Your neighbor's doing it anyway. They're trying to do it anyway. And they're going to find a way to do it anyway. And that would be money that would be revenue for the state of Texas. What do you want to do about it? There you go. It's the sin. It's the legislative session of sin, part 200. Okay, I mean, there's fundamental questions before all this stuff ramps up. And I don't think they're as easy. And I don't think any of us deserve an easy pass of saying something like, well, what the heck? People are doing it anyway. Or, I don't know, I don't want my neighbor doing that, so forget the whole thing. I think there's a lot more nuance to it. Then there's the political realities that I know many of you are going to scream at me and fight back and push back, but the political reality is unhealthy. But the political reality is, even though some people in the legislature now with an R next to their name, because that's all that matters, sound like they're open to it. They do. And they're already making noise that they're open to it. But is that enough? And I can remind you who really votes in the state of Texas. So here you go. Taxpayers, bettors, whoever you are, do you want the upside that comes with legalized betting? And that upside is this, revenue. If you're one that wants to bet legal, the upside is there's no more workaround. There's no more having to go somewhere else. There's no more, betting through some sketchy person. One thing about legalized betting is it is a completely above board. It is not mafia influenced. We're not in 1970 anymore. It's a completely transparent industry. Everything is above board. These are reputable businesses getting in the business. Now, having said that, are you prepared for the downside that comes with gambling? And I think it's naive, and I'm not going to do it, to pretend that there's not a downside. Absolutely, there's a downside. You bet. And it's real, and it can get really bad. To dismiss that part of it, I think, is unfair and insensitive. So, are you ready for the upside? Are you also ready for what comes with the downside? Do you think your political heroes will do what 39 other states have done? The fact that 39 other states have done it, do you think that impacts your political heroes? And then I think there's a sidebar to this that is just now coming up that I found pretty interesting in the story. And that is it an effective way to sell gambling? To sell you, to sell your neighbor, to sell your grandma, to sell the people of Texas, in particular, your political heroes at the Capitol? Is it an effective way to sell them? Is it a convincing argument to say, well, look, in the month of October, 1 million people, let's just try to say the average bet was $25. 1 million people in the state of Texas were turned away by the geo platforms that can block you. And that's the way it works, right? I mean, you can make a bet in this state, in this state, in this state, but the geophysics of the whole thing will block you from making a legal bet. And in 1 month, 1 million of your neighbors were turned away. They want to bet. They probably did find a way to bet. And the argument is, you're not recouping that money. Is that an effective way to sell this? Is it? I don't know. Maybe. It's up to you. I have my own view of politics in the state. I have my own view of how this is going to play out. But this is really the earliest push. This is, I got to tell you, I think there's more R's on board, at least what they say, than any other time I can remember. Now, I don't know how that's going to, I have an opinion how that's going to translate. It won't. But, you can ask yourself, gosh, sounds like some Republicans on our board already. They're the ones pushing the idea. They're the ones selling. They're the one. Now, they've been paid off, of course. You know that. Please don't be naive, right? It's lobbying. Is it an effective way to sell? Hey, everyone's trying it. We blocked him. That's money we could have had. Is that an effective way to sell? So, and then there's the other part that I'm been asking the same question for, let's see, how long have I done this? Like 2.5 years, maybe, something like that. For decades, I've been asking the same question because the idea of sin to make money, the idea of gambling and marijuana to make money, and everybody else is doing it. Why is the state of Texas a constant outlier in this? I've asked the same question for decades, and I'll do it again because it sounds like the noise coming out of the Capitol, the noise around the state of Texas, the noise from people with R's next to their name, more so than any other time is, hey, why don't we get with the times? Or, gosh, the money's leaving the state. We could use that money, that kind of stuff. They sound more open to it. So I'll ask the question, and maybe your opinion of this has changed over time. I don't know the number. What is higher? Okay. Percentage-wise, approval-wise, what is higher? The number of Texans that want recreational cannabis legalized, or the number of Texans who want sports betting legalized? And I don't know the answer. I think the marijuana, I think cannabis is around 76 or 80%, I think. I'm going to say that sports betting maybe slightly less, but they're probably in the same ballpark. So let's just work with the number unless you tell me otherwise. I don't have it in front of me. Let's just say it's 6 and 10. Let's say 60% plus are in favor of both. Okay. The legislative session is right around the corner. I find that to be a horrible nightmare, but maybe it makes you happy. And they're talking about gambling already. So which is more likely to happen in the next 5 years? Legalize recreational marijuana or legalize sports betting? I said 5 years. Which one? I say neither, again, like I always do. But maybe you disagree. Maybe you think this is the different time. Maybe you think this is a different way to sell it. Now, I'm going to tell you a few things, and don't shoot the messenger on this. Let me just give you the political optics because I think it's easy to get caught up in normal statistics. Voting in this state is not normal, okay? 3% of voters decide everything. And don't tell me I'm wrong because the data has been done on this. So it's easy to get caught up in, my gosh, man, 6 and 10 of us want to be able to make a bet on our phone. 6 and 10 of us, myself included, think you should be able to use recreational marijuana. But that's not the real story in this state. Here's what I think you have to understand the reality. And the question is, can enough R's, because that's all that matters in this state, do you think enough R's, can enough R's be influenced to then influence the most rural R's to get on board? Because Republican primaries decide everything in the state of Texas. Okay? They decide everything. 3% of the voters vote in Republican primaries, yet 97% of those votes go forward and are carried out. Who votes in Republican primaries? That's the 3%, truthfully. And there's a great Texas Monthly story about this about a year or two ago. And it really sort of reminds you, like when you're confused about numbers in this state, it reminds you who is really calling the shots. 3% vote in primaries, and those primaries decide 97% of elections. So I think, just to reframe it, to be fair, are you sure those 3%, do you know who those 3% are? Have you talked to your grandmother recently? There you go. Now, I'm not just talking about your grandmother in Houston or your grandmother in Dallas. I'm talking about your grandmother in Nacogdoches or your grandmother in Amarillo or your grandfather in Muleshoe. 3% decide 97%. So I don't know. No, I do know. No, they won't. I don't think so. But can they be sold? Right? Can enough people be sold on the idea that, man, 1 million people in the state were turned away from making a bet, and we can just assume they're going to make that bet somehow, some way, somewhere else? And I do agree, with the fundamental argument, whether you want to make a bet or not. And that should be respected. And I think it's a terrible thing to not acknowledge the problems that come with this. But I will say this, that the last thing anybody wants is for anything, practically anything, to be pushed under the table. That's not healthy. Good business is good business, okay? And these gambling apps are good business. These are transparent companies. These are successful companies and all that stuff. So, to assume that they're sketchy or shady, I don't think is fair at all. It's no longer true. I mean, good business is good.